It's News Talk 580 1059 KMJ. Welcome to the Marc Kapetan Show. This is attorney Marc Kapetan, your host. Today's show is brought to you by the Kapetan Brothers Law Firm, serving the Central Valley since 1995. If you or anybody you know has been injured in an auto accident, a truck accident, or a motorcycle accident, give us a call at 559-498-8000. Or if you've been arrested or cited for a criminal offense, call us 559-498-8000. Kapetan Brothers, we are the Valley's law firm. I'm looking across the table here because I see a guy who can't believe that a long-haired guy like me is an attorney, right?
Hey, dude, can you help me with this ankle bracelet?
Hey, believe me, most of my rock and roll friends have ankle bracelets on. So, listen, folks, this is a very, very special day because we have a truly, truly famous guy before me sitting here. He is a favorite of my brother John's. He is the quintessential voice in rock and roll these days. Singer and frontman. He's currently on a solo tour, but you probably most know him, and you probably can't stand to hear this, but you probably most know him most because of his years with Motley Crue. He was also with The Scream and Rat and a host of other gigs. Today is John Corabi, and welcome, John.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, man, I'll tell you, thanks for having me. Thanks for coming. I mean, my brother John, he calls me up a couple days ago, and he goes, hey, I got John Corabi coming. Why don't you come on down? I go, yeah, great. What do you need me to do? Sound? You need me to help load in the gear or whatever? And he goes, no, it's just him and an acoustic guitar. I'm like, what? Him and an acoustic? How long have you been doing this solo thing for?
It's weird. Pretty much every song that I've ever written was on an acoustic guitar. So I kind of figure it out there and then translate it later to an electric format. But that was the first guitar I had, was an acoustic guitar. And like I said, I always did the writing that way. Right. And then it was weird. I met Steve Marriott. I was telling you yesterday. Yeah. I met Steve Marriott when I was doing the Scream album. And he just said something to me. He was like, if you can sit down and play a song by yourself and entertain an audience, and it's a great song. And I just remembered that, so I've always wanted to do it.
And you answered one of my first questions, because I was sitting here going, well, I mean, how's a guy going to sit and play rock and roll songs on an acoustic guitar and make it sound full? But I got to say, I went there last night with my best buddy Richard, and who's like a Michael Jackson fan, and my little niece. She's 27 years old, who knows nothing about hard rock and roll. After the third or fourth song, they look at me and they go, "Oh my God, this guy's great. He's got a great voice. He sings great. He's a real pro." I go, "Yeah, that's what a pro is, right there."
I appreciate that when you just give me the addresses so I can send them each $5 for the compliment. No, but it's you know what? It's weird. Like, I always started with the acoustic, boom, yeah. and it's weird. Like, little subtle things to go from like a D chord to a D minor or D7. Like, you hear it follows the melody.
Right.
But Steve Marriott told me that. He goes, if you can do that by yourself on an acoustic guitar and entertain people, then it's a good song.
And from a great singer, yeah.
I just kind of, I don't know, man. I love doing it. It's simple, it's intimate, and I get to play around with the audience, as you saw.
Yeah, that was great.
And just have some fun, man. It's, it's not rocket science.
It was a great show, and again, as we're driving home, the same two people said, "Oh, I've never sat near a person that's a professional like that, in an intimate setting like that, and realize that there's a bunch of great singers, but then there's people that have just that little extra special thing." And it was, like I said, it was a great show, and they were blown away, and they're just not rock and roll people. And so, great job, man.
Thank you. And you know what, honestly, Steve and I have been talking about it for 24 hours now, but
Steve Emler from the sound guy for Tesla and my best friend for years and years, sitting here with us. Yeah.
We, when I first started doing these, obviously I'm like, how do I do an acoustic thing? And I went out with opening for Cinderella. I did like 50 some cities.
Right.
And I was thinking like, well, I've done all these records, so I need to do like 1 or 2 songs from each record to kind of cover my whole career. And it was working, but I would find myself go to, like, at the end of the night, I'd go sit at the bar or go sit at the merch table, and people would go, hey, that 4th song, what was that about? Or why did you write that? Or da-da-da. So I sat and I thought about it, and then I was talking to my father, and an uncle, and they said, if people want to hear the CD, if they want to hear the music, they can just buy the CD and just stay at home.
Right.
Give them something that, tell them some stories. Tell them why you wrote a song. Tell them how you wrote a song or whatever. So now it's become a little bit of a storyteller's comedy, goof off, relaxing.
And I got to say, except for the one girl who kept yelling on the corner over there, and just the people that are always going to be like that, the audience was glued. I mean, they listened to every word, and
I couldn't believe it. It was awesome.
I don't mean this in a bad way. You would talk for about 10 minutes about something, and people were just sitting there listening to the whole story, waiting for the end of that story, and then you would go into the song, and it was just beautiful the way you did it, man.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
But it's also brave. I mean, part of what is fascinating about this is that you almost have a branded name, and maybe it's because you went into one of the most famous bands, Motley Crue, and you became John Corabi, now singing for Motley Crue. But then John Corabi just sort of became this name. It's almost like Glenn Hughes, where an audience knows Rod Stewart, they know this famous singer, that famous singer, but band guys and musicians and people in the industry know this extra special thing, John Corabi. And the solo act, has it helped with that brand of becoming the one-man act John Corabi?
Yeah, well, I think it's maybe not paid off yet.
Right.
It's really weird because a lot of people ask me, my first solo, real solo record was, I wanted to do something, because I was looking at my history, and obviously the first thing everybody talks about is the Motley record.
Right.
It was a heavy record. It was, and I'm proud of it, but I didn't want to be just that guy.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I'm like, how could I kind of set myself up where I'm taking the proverbial eraser and kind of starting fresh?
Yeah.
So I decided to do an acoustic record, like just full blown, there's not even any drums. It's just percussion, few acoustic guitars, vocals like the Eagles, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I did the record, and it was received pretty well, went on tour with Cinderella, and now I'm releasing new music, and I think because I did that, now everybody's kind of like, okay, what's he going to do next?
Right.
Which I love. It just kind of leaves it open for me to just do whatever. And
well, I'll confess, last night we're driving up with Ray Appleton, who everybody in California knows, famous DJ here in town, or radio talk show guy. And he said, Ray's a bit up there in years and stuff like that. Sorry, Ray. But as we're driving down, I said, yeah, John Corabi's here. And he goes, oh my God. He goes, the best album from Motley Crue. But he knew John Corabi, not just a Motley Crue thing. And he said, oh no, he goes, that's what a real rock and roll band should sound like. That's what Vince Neil should have sounded like, basically.
I call, everybody's got their own perspective on things, and I appreciate the compliment, you know what I mean? But I get it. It was funny about right around when Steven did, this is a story I didn't tell you, when Steven Tyler did American Idol. The other guys were like, oh, what's he doing?
Right.
Blah blah blah, and they were looking for another singer. And this friend of mine was tour managing them. And he called me on the phone, and he goes, hey, I just want to give you a heads up, man. Your name's in the hat to, do that gig.
Wow.
And now I was like, wow. But then the fan part kicked in, and I'm like, dude, they can't do that. Steven is Aerosmith. You know what I mean? Like, take my name out of the hat. And which made me also realize how all the fans felt when I was in Motley. Do you know what I mean? And it
because
kind of
and we're going to talk about it because you're a huge fan of Aerosmith and Steven Tyler, and we're going to geek out on Steven Tyler after this. Yeah. All right, we'll be right back with John Corabi, great rock and roll singer. Right after this, this is the Marc Kapetan Show on KMJ. It's News Talk 580 1059 KMJ. Folks, listen, I'm going to pot this volume down as I always like to do. If you have been in an accident, call the Kapetan brothers. Call your local attorney. Marcella, you liked that last time that I said, don't call the LA attorneys. Don't call the San Francisco attorneys. They have what are called cappers, guys who will come into our town and into our valley and try to take cases from our valley residents that are probably best served by a local attorney. We know the system. We know the judges. We know all the attorneys in town. And so if you have been in an accident, call your local attorney or do me a favor, call the Kapetan brothers. If a friend of yours or a family member has been in an accident, do them a favor and have them call an attorney. It's the best thing that you could do. It's a free consultation. We'll be happy to put your mind at ease. If you've been in an accident, a truck accident, auto accident, motorcycle accident, give us a call. Or if you've been arrested or cited for a criminal offense, call us. Kapetan Brothers, 559-498-8000, 559-498-8000. Kapetan Brothers, we are the Valley's law firm. Someone who says that I need to cut off his ankle bracelet, but I think he's joking around here, is our guest for today, John Corabi. Like I said, he's the quintessential voice in rock and roll, most currently known for his years in Motley Crue, but now on a solo acoustic tour. John, you were talking about Dad at one point. What Mom and Dad, what was your early life?
I was born in Philadelphia.
Philadelphia, Aerosmith town,
yes.
right?
No, they're Boston.
Oh, that's right, Boston.
I was,
right.
Yeah, little. I was like New York light.
Yep, you're right.
No, but Philly, great town. My dad was, Roman Catholic, Italian, blah blah blah. My mom was Irish.
What did Dad do?
You know what? He was very hardworking. He was a numbers guy. He was like an accountant kind of a thing, and
when you say an Italian numbers guy, I mean, come on now.
No,
so he was an accountant.
Whatever. Let's just leave it at that. I don't know. Yeah. What's the? I don't know what the legal thing is here, but no, he worked for a company. It was a clothing company. And it was called Bond's Clothes years and years and years ago. And it was weird. They had a deal with the Philadelphia Eagles. Right. And the players used to come in. Obviously, back then in the 60s, they were making, $30,000 a year, right, $40,000. Right. So these guys would come in and they would buy suits through this company, and Dad would keep records of everything, and they would do stuff on layaway, and so he was always kind of a numbers guy. He worked at he had a night job at one point, and then forget about it. I'm not even going to get into it. My family took over, and we controlled about 3 unions.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were literally my 2 cousins, my uncle, my dad was like the accountant, my aunt was like the receptionist, like the whole family. And it was like the paper workers and steel workers unions in Philadelphia.
No kidding.
Forget about it over there.
Yeah, and believe me, and that's highly political, highly contentious. I mean, that's a heck of a job right there.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. What is and then when Mom, did she work?
She was, my mom my mom and Dad got married very young. I think my mom was like 18 when they got married. My dad was in, he went to the Korean War. Right. And came back and met my mom and they got married and dated, and she was a model and the old switchboard operator.
No kidding.
And then when they divorced, then she became a factory worker for the rest of her life.
She was a model, though.
Younger, yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah, she was really she was 5'11", almost 6 foot tall. Yeah, she was a big woman.
Wow.
Yeah.
What did they? I mean, listen, beautiful mom who's a model. Now that has a little bit of entertainment industry to it, but Dad, is a numbers guy. What does he think when son says, "Dad, I'm going to be a rock and roll player"?
It was, he was not. Well, it was funny. Again, we're talking the '60s.
Yeah.
He hated, there was a little group of kids that used to hang out on the corner at this candy store. They were all hippies and the no shoes and, peace, love, the Vietnam War, And my dad was like, stay away from them. They're drug addicts. And then I would sit and watch this one guy play guitar, and I was just fascinated by him.
Do you remember the guy's name?
You know what's funny? I never knew his real name. Everybody called him Birdman.
The Birdman.
The Birdman. I actually just finished a book. There's a crazy story about him in my book, but my dad was really anti those guys.
What's the name of the book, real quick?
Horseshoes and Hand Grenades.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It's an autobiography, but he asked me the same thing, Steve. He goes, why? And I go, I've been the king of being close. I've been the king of being at the right place at the wrong time. And many people that know my name, there's still a ton of people that you go, oh, we're going to go see John Corabi at the club tonight. And they go, wait, why does that name sound familiar?
It's a beautiful term. I mean, we used to, when we were kids, we'd say horseshoes, hand grenades, jarts, darts, or dating. For you, we would always say to the buddy, the loser buddy, dating for you. You're always close, but never the prize. Basically.
Yeah, and it was my dad that pegged it for me, because when I did the acoustic record, I did half of the record was songs that had been out before, and I just did acoustic versions of them, but I felt like they didn't really quite get their fair shake.
Yeah.
So I was kidding with my dad. I'm on the phone. I go, yeah, I'm doing this record. It's acoustic. He's like, oh, I love when you do acoustic music.
Oh, nice.
I go, okay, great. He goes, what are you calling the record? I go, I don't know. And I was kidding. I go, John Corabi's Almost Greatest Hits. And he goes, or you could just call it Horseshoes and Hand Grenades. And I go, wait, what does that mean? But he was really super dry. We got along really great in the end, but in the beginning, it was just contentious. And
so he became supportive over time, basically?
I didn't know it, because he was really just kind of with me, very nuts and bolts. Yeah. You pay your taxes, do this, do that. And it was weird until, he was married to my mom. He had married a second time, and then he had a girlfriend, at the very end. And she showed me this. He had a Foot Locker, and it, in the locker, and there was every magazine I had ever been in.
Oh, really?
I didn't know. He never told me. And, she would say, oh, yeah, it's funny. We go grocery shopping, and I get the cart, and I go get the food, and your dad goes right to the magazine thing, and he just looks through all the magazines, and if there's an article, he buys it.
He'll go through the rock and roll magazines.
And he clipped them, and he just saved all the magazines in this thing, and I didn't know it until after he had passed.
Oh, so I was bring a tear to your eye,
it was one of those moments. I'm like, oh, man, because I thought he just hated what I did. But
oh my God,
he was funny. I was talking to me, he just had these dry lines. He would do the Horseshoes, Hand Grenades, and he said one time when I was talking about the band Union, and I said, I think this is the band, Dad. I think my ship has finally come in.
Yeah.
And he would go, well, just don't be at the airport.
Your ship's come in, don't be at the airport.
Don't be at the airport.
You'll miss it again.
So I'm like, okay, let me write that down.
Hey, but Union, real quick, because we got about 30 seconds. Union, it was with Bruce Kulick from Kiss. And was that's funny, man, because I got a question about this. Was that basically the guys who were the fill-in guys, you, Bruce Kulick, when he gets into Kiss, etc., was that your guys' attempt to say, we're going to do something on our own? And
we had both just lost the huge gigs,
right.
Girlfriends, wives, all this stuff. And we knew each other prior to that. So Union was just therapy sessions. I think we need to pay the bills.
Yeah.
Let's pay the bills.
Let's pay some bills. Well, speaking about paying bills, we got to go to a commercial. We are on with John Corabi from John Corabi, but also from Motley Crue, Union, the Scream,
every band but ABBA and Bieber.
Those will be next. We'll be right back after this. This is the Marc Kapetan Show on KMJ. It's News Talk 580 1059 KMJ. Welcome back to the Marc Kapetan Show. Folks, you know the deal. If you have been injured in an auto accident, truck accident, motorcycle accident, if you've been arrested, who do you call, Marcella? You call who? They call the Kapetan Brothers. You heard her say it. Call the Kapetan Brothers Law Firm at 559-498-8000. Once again, Kapetan Brothers, 559-498-8000. We are the Valley's law firm. I am getting right back into it because we are on with John Corabi from Motley Crue and John Corabi's solo act. Well, I mean, is that how I say it? John Corabi solo act?
That's good. That'll
good.
Work.
Listen, a singer extraordinary, one of the greatest voices in rock and roll. Okay, I had to say it though. That voice, I would kill for your voice. I understand that at one point you were in a Steven Tyler tribute band. Okay, and you geeked out on Steven Tyler, and is that voice come natural, or is it from years of listening to a guy like Steven Tyler? And I don't mean to embarrass you with that kind of thing, because I think it's great, and saying, I love that voice, I would kill for that voice, but I'm actually going to practice, having a rock and roll voice.
Now, you know what's weird? Because my wife says that certain songs that I have, she'll hear them and she goes, "It's crazy. You sound like Steven."
Just a little bit, yeah.
The inflections and things. And I go, you know what? I really believe it's kind of an Philadelphia, New York, Boston there's a lot of similarities in the slangs and different things like that. And I think it's just a combination of, maybe I tried to mimic him when I was younger.
But it doesn't sound like it at all, except in certain little parts or a certain song, you'll go, oh. And then when I heard you singing another song, maybe it was a Motley Crue song, I go, oh, wait a minute. Now I see why you got into Motley Crue, because you have a little bit of that sound, but I mean, way better, But then I sit there and I go, wait a minute, it's almost like Vince Neil was almost trying to sound like Steven Tyler too.
Well, I know Nikki is a huge Aerosmith fan.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
That is the connection.
Yeah, and so was I. I mean, I was into everything 70s.
Yeah,
Grand Funk, Zeppelin, old Aerosmith, Humble Pie. But it's weird. I cut my teeth in cover bands back in Philadelphia, and we would do everything.
Right. But
we did do an Aerosmith tribute on the weekends. The last set was, we would do Aerosmith. So, and the idea was to sound as close to the record as possible, because that's, that's what you do. So I tried to mimic a lot of his things, and I think I just subconsciously picked up certain things. And
did you have that voice from the beginning, though? Did you always have that John Corabi voice?
I don't remember. I don't
really.
Because I think maybe to a degree, because I was even fascinated with like the Beatles, for example.
Right.
There's two songs that I love that something triggered with me when I heard them, but I was fascinated to certain parts of the songs. One was from Abbey Road called "Oh Darlin'."
Right.
And I love Paul's delivery on the verses, but then something happens on that bridge section. He kicks it into overdrive, and he gets that, you know. And I was like, what is he doing there? And I would try to mimic that. And then he does the same thing later in the record on a song called Golden Slumbers.
Yeah, absolutely.
He sings the verse, and then he gets into that, when he says, smile, wait you. And he gets into this grit, and I always loved that.
Yeah.
So I would try and mimic it. So I think I've always been kind of fascinated with guys like Rod Stewart. They have that raspy, whatever. And, you know, so I always kind of drifted towards those guys. I love Steve Perry, but I never sounded like that. I always drifted towards the raspier Bob Seger's.
If I ever try to practice that, I listen to Faces, with Rod Stewart.
Yep.
And you did it last night, and I was blown away by it. Seasons of Wither by, Aerosmith.
Yeah. Great song.
Just a great song.
Unbelievable.
Now, here's the key part, though. Here's the key interesting story you told last night. I have a studio in town. I'm recording demos when Tesla is trying to get back together. Mm-hmm. All right, they had all broken apart and everything, and I got Jeff Keith sitting next to me at about 2 a.m. I said, "Hey, I've set up a microphone so you could go sing the vocals outside in the studio there." He goes, No. I like to sing inside with the engineer with a handheld mic when I'm doing these scratch vocals. I go, okay. He sits right next to me, and he starts singing the first song off this solo album that they were doing. And I finish, and after he finishes, I press stop, and I sit there, and I go, oh, my God. He goes, what? I go, that voice is right next to me. And you had a similar thing with Steven Tyler.
Yeah. It's crazy. And now I got it, because I didn't expand on it too much, or expound whatever the word is. I at 15, I didn't tell this story yesterday. I was so maniacally into Aerosmith that I ran away from home with just enough money to buy a one-way Amtrak ticket to Boston.
Oh my God.
And I was convinced that I was like, I look cool. I got the guitar. I know every song that I'm going up there, and they're going to get rid of that Whitford guy. And I went. And then I started getting harassed at like 4 o'clock in the morning. People were like, "Hey, dude, what you got in the case, man? Give me that guitar," And I was like,
"You're literally on the Amtrak."
I was in Boston. I was in some square. Like, I'm just like wandering around. My mom's freaking out. My family's like, "Where'd he go?" I don't know. He climbed out a window, and I left. I got on the train, and I went one way. And then I had to hitchhike my way back with my tail between my legs. But
hitchhike.
Yeah, I hitchhiked back in the 70s through Massachusetts, down through Yonkers and Bronx, and
those were the days,
dude. I was convinced I was going to be in Aerosmith.
Yeah.
And when he jumped over that couch and sat next to me, and we sang "Seasons of Wither" together.
Okay, listen, you're in the studio.
Yes.
And with Motley Crue,
yep.
And they trick you, and we'll make a long story short, they trick you basically by saying, hey, there's some band recording, you should go burst in and say, I'm the new singer for Motley Crue. And you burst in, and it's Aerosmith sitting in the next
Joe
studio.
Perry and Steven Tyler. Joe's doing a guitar solo, interrupted him, and he's not happy. And then Steven, God, comes running at me, and I'm like, oh my God, like dumbfounded. Nicest guy on the planet. I just didn't know what to say to him. I was like, and then Tommy and Nicky are like, you can't be a fanboy. We're peers. I'm like, you guys have been working at this for 10 years, 15 years.
Right.
This is new. Like, I don't know. I can't process this. And it just the whole time. But honestly, Steven was such a sweetheart. He did the coolest thing. Him and Joe, my son was with me. They took my son for ice cream and then let my son bang on Joey Kramer's drums while they were working on stuff. And just awesome.
And
awesome people.
And at some point, you're alone in the studio. You start playing on the acoustic guitar because you're starting to geek out on your fandom of Aerosmith, and you start geeking out by playing every Aerosmith song on the acoustic guitar. And when you get to Seasons of Wither, you're playing it, and all of a sudden, from behind, you hear this voice. Someone snuck in the room. Steven Tyler, right?
Yes, he heard me, and he came up behind me, and he started singing in my ear, and I'm like, oh. And like I said, he jumped over the couch. We tuned the guitar. He told me the whole story, and we played it and sang it together. It was awesome.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing. We're going to be right back with John Corabi from Motley Crue, from Union, from The Scream, from being friends with Steven Tyler and all those guys, from the tribute band.
Yeah, go figure.
This is the Marc Kapetan Show on KMJ. We'll be right back. It's News Talk 580, 105.9 KMJ. Folks, we are getting right back into this show because of what we were just talking about during the break. We are on with John Corabi. Forget about the Kapetan brothers and everything you've heard about accidents and all that kind of stuff. Folks, listen, 559-498 Kapetan Brothers. We are the Valley's law firm, blah, blah, blah. John Corabi's talking about how Motley Crue broke up his marriage, and we are not going to tell the story, but what I wanted to ask you, John Corabi from Motley Crue here. Listen, John, the stories about Motley Crue, you were there for about, what, 4 years?
From 92 to almost 97. It was like 4.5 years. Yeah.
So we've seen the movie The Dirt. All right. That horrible movie, The Dirt. We've heard all the stories. The debauchery, the partying, the girls, all that kind of stuff. It's not just tales of rock and roll and stuff like that. It's real life stuff with those guys.
Pretty much, yes. Wow. I mean, obviously some of it's, it's even taken a little colored,
absolutely.
For the reader's pleasure, but...
Well, I mean,
it's pretty true to form. Yeah.
It wasn't colored enough to listen.
Maybe pleasure was the wrong word. Maybe discomfort.
That's funny, but I mean, it was really the part of the demise of your relationship with your wife.
Yeah, and it's something at the time that I didn't, because that story I just told you, we had already kind of separated.
Yeah.
And I couldn't understand it because I was in it at the moment. As big as LA was or is, news travels fast. And so my wife would be grocery shopping and, somebody who knew somebody was like, oh, yeah, isn't your husband in,
right.
Motley? Oh, I heard they had a bunch of strippers at the studio last night. And it would get back. And, I was in this weird position where it's like, okay, I'm in a band with this guys, and I don't want to tell my wife because my wife knows their wives.
Right.
And it's, so you're in this weird thing.
But for you, it's an opportunity of a lifetime. They were the biggest at the time. You took over for Vince Neil, who decided to go on hiatus. Did you think it was going to be a permanent thing, or was it intended to be a permanent thing, or did you know from the beginning that eventually this guy's going to come back?
I didn't know it at the time. Now in hindsight, I look at it and go, did they kind of, just use you? I don't want to say use me, but use me to get through the grunge era. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know. At the time, the way they were talking about Vince, the past, I was like, oh, there's no way they're ever going to hire this guy back again because, I mean, it's kind of common knowledge. All the guys, they're not the best of friends.
Right.
They travel separately. They stay in separate hotels. So.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it is what it is. I say,
you've been in a bunch of bands, and like you said, LA talks, everybody talks, et cetera, and all that news goes around. After enough years gone by, because it's such an incestual thing with rock and roll people and being in bands, and you played guitar with Rat, you filled in, or when Robin Crosby died, et cetera. Does it come to a point to where everything's copacetic now, where you could go up to a Vince Neil or you could go up to some of these guys and actually sit down and talk, and can everybody be friends again as far as that's concerned? The
only person, and it's really a kind of one-sided thing, of all the bands that I've been in, I just saw Vince not that long ago. Like Vince and I see each other. He's like, Corabi, how you doing? We're fine. I'm fine with Tommy. I'm fine with Mick. For some apparent reason, Nicky's on this weird, I don't know what's going on with him. Because we had a band again after Motley. We were in a band together called Brides of Destruction.
Right.
And we were fine. And then all of a sudden, like 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, he just went on this tangent, about I can't write, I can't do this. I had no fire, and I'm like, where's this coming from? It's like 20 years later. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know what, it's a one-sided thing. He's got issues with me, but I don't really have any issues with anybody I've ever been in a band with.
Right.
So I'm good with everybody.
And you got to be, because you I mean, same thing with Bruce Kulick and stuff like that. It's almost like pinch hitters or something like that. You've played with tons of people, and it's never been a personality thing that you've left, or that the band broke up. It was just always, basically not opportunities, right?
Yeah, Union never split up.
Right.
It's just we were doing our thing. We weren't really selling a lot of records. We're trying, and Bruce Kulick got offered the gig with Grand Funk Railroad.
Right.
More money. I got offered the gig with Rat. More money.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, Brent and Jamie got offered the gig playing with Vince Neil in his solo band. Everybody made more money.
Right.
So, it's just circumstances,
Real quick, your first band, The Scream, came out with the debut album 1991, Let It Scream. You walk in the studio, and who's sitting behind the desk but the legendary Eddie Kramer, who was the engineer for Jimi Hendrix, Beatles, I mean, everybody,
Zeppelin,
right?
the
Zeppelin,
Stones. Yeah, it was crazy.
I mean, like maybe the number one rock and roll engineer ever, okay? How do you get that? What do you do to prepare with a guy like Eddie Kramer?
To be honest with you, didn't think it was going to happen. The label said, who would you like to work with? We all had a list. Pretty much on all of our lists was Eddie. Huge fans of his work, on Physical Graffiti and, whatever. So we took a shot. We sent the demo in, and story has it that he was driving his car. He had an office in New York City. He was driving to upstate New York. He got our CD, popped it in, freaked out when he heard it. And he literally went to a phone booth,
phone
91,
booth back then, right, yeah.
Went to a phone booth, and he called Hollywood Records, and he said, I have to see this band. And he came out, and obviously we were intimidated to a degree, but he was actually really funny, made us feel very comfortable, introduced us to a lot of his friends, like, Frampton and Steve Marriott used to come by the studio all the time. Wow. They were putting Humble Pie back together.
Wow.
Just all these great people, and he was really, really super, super. He just made us feel comfortable.
Yeah, right. Oh man, that's
and stories for days.
Yeah, I can imagine. Right.
Oh my God.
All right. Lastly, you got the solo thing going on. You are now your own booking agent, manager, everything.
No, I have a manager. I have a booking agent in Los Angeles. But the COVID thing really made me restructure. So I'm my own label.
Right.
I record my own music now, and then I give it to Marty Fredrickson, and he mixes everything for me. But
after doing all the things and all the relationships with all the bands, et cetera, is this just a much more comfortable place for you to be doing these things solo? Is it just so much easier going out on the road solo like this? Or do you miss something with being with these crazy band
I have a solo band as well. My son is my drummer, and I have a bunch of friends from Nashville that they're just easy. I don't like drama.
Yeah.
I just want to go, have fun. I'm not fixing world hunger.
That's what
I'm
it's
just
all
playing
about now.
some music, having some fun, putting a smile on your face and calling it a day.
Yes, you are. Yeah, you did. Know what I mean? You did last night. I appreciate
That's
that, man.
only because I was tickling you.
We'll get to that later.
Yeah.
Your son was in some famous bands too, right?
Yeah,
Takes after Dad.
He's been doing great. He's in my solo band. He's done some stuff with a band called Tantric.
Right.
He's out. Actually, they got a new song coming out with his new band that he's in now. It's called Rehab. So I'm proud of him. He's doing his own thing.
Upcoming shows, what's in the future for you?
I'm playing tomorrow. Tomorrow in Sacramento.
Yeah.
But hey, Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, right. Lots of tours. Hey, folks, if you want to treat yourself to something, you got to go watch this guy, John Corabi from Motley Crue, and John Corabi from John Corabi, man. He's just like I said, the quintessential voice of rock and roll. I loved the show last night. Everybody go, if he's in a town near you, please go out and watch him. John Corabi, thanks for being on the show, John.
Thanks for having me.
We will see you next week on the Marc Kapetan Show with hopefully some more great rock and roll players or whatever we have. This is the Marc Kapetan Show on KMJ.